message.
No, she's here.
Oh, there she is. Dadgummit. Hey,
hello, everyone.
I was going to be here, did you?
I complete faith in you. I just thought you were going to be a little bit later than that, so I could be in the middle of the introduction and then say hi. But now I'm saying hi instead of doing the introduction. So, hello, everyone, and welcome to the weekly 60-day novel challenge live show with your hosts, Hank Garner, Abby Matthews, and myself, Doug Lansborough. I see the chat is already a bumping, but Hank, Abby, how are we doing today?
Fair to Midland.
Yeah. Yeah, great.
Yeah. I had a hailstorm today, so that was fun. Actually, two separate instances of hail. One when I was outside getting back from a walk with Nora. So
did you get conked on the head by some hail?
They're just little pieces, right? And sometimes they get in between my glasses and my eye, and I'm not happy with that.
Oh, that sounds terrible.
But that's okay, because I wrote some good words in the sprints that you just hosted with Chris, Hank. And I know a lot of people who are in the chat now were over in that, but the chat is so bumping that I can't feasibly go through and say hello to everybody. But hello, everyone.
Hi. Abby, you live in the deep south, and you live deeper south than I do. When we get hailstorms, we get like these big, gnarly hailstorms. Do you guys get that as well?
Not really. No? Not the way we did when I lived other places. I mean, is Florida really the deep south? It's so south. It's like mostly north.
Yeah, there is it's kind of a what's the term I'm looking for? Diminishing returns. Yeah, like you get so far south that it goes the other direction. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, we don't really get those.
Huh. Interesting.
We get
before we dive into it, Elsie's asking. Oh, sorry, wrong one, not Elsie. Bernadette's asking, the dog or a cow on the floor behind you. And that it's tough to see this guy here, but he actually has antlers. He's a moose. They're just kind of flopped over, and maybe one day I'll like pin them up or something so you can see. But
what is the moose's name?
The moose's name is Doug. Not by choice. It's not like I'm like, oh, I need another Doug in the house. But it's a moose, and I at the same time got a mug that was a moose, and it was called Doug the Mug. And so we thought, okay, if that's a moose and this is a moose and they're coming in the house at the same time, then we're all just Doug. So
makes it easy to remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This label on the screen here, right there, isn't actually for me. It's for him. All right, let's get into it. We are here for a 60-day novel challenge, a live show. We are in the 6th week of the 60-day novel challenge and the 2nd week of the writing portion of it. If you're following along with the writing part of it, you are into Act 2 by now, probably, unless you're writing a longer book. You might not be, but most of us are into Act 2, and to be more specific, the first half of Act 2. And to that end, we are talking about the rising action today. Rising action is, we're talking about rising action, we're talking about subplots, we're talking about antagonists, and then we're going to have time for a whole lot of Q&A at the end. So ask your questions as we go. We always have at least 45 minutes, probably longer, banked for Q&A at the end, and we'll flag them so that we can answer them when we get to that portion, but we'll have some good discussions along the way as well. First, Hank, you shared this in sprints, but tell the fine people how your novel's coming along for this challenge.
I'm at 52,333 words at present.
Wild stuff. Now, did you start word 1 on November 1st? Just for my own ego here?
I did, but I did have a little bit of a cheat. Because I have said before that at the beginning of each chapter, I've got a little snippet, a little interlude that is the podcast episode introduction, and they're less than 250 words each. They're less than a page, about 3/4 of a page. So what would that be? About a little over 200 words.
Yeah, sure.
So I think I carried over 10 of those from the beginning, which are about 2,000 words. So about 2,000 words.
Still, winner, chicken dinner.
Other than that, So let's say 50,000 fresh words.
Excellent. Well, round of applause. That's awesome. I see you got some congratulations in the chat too. But great job, Hank, hitting that 50,000 word mark. I know some folks in the challenge have already hit it as well, which is awesome. Abby, you're done your book for the challenge, aren't you?
I'm done.
You're done in what, week 1, week 1.5?
Yeah, I was done in week 1.
Yeah.
Sorry, y'all don't write for kids.
And there's a lot of duck chat happening in the chat now too, and that's inspired by Abby's book.
Quack,
okay.
quack.
It's been very, very difficult for me not to march my rear end down to the wildlife sanctuary and say, do you know there are like a dozen writers all writing books about Stu right now at work? But I'm like, what are they going to do with that information? I don't know. So.
I think that we each should send them a copy of our book, and they should put them like in a some sort of shadow box or something, like in the lobby. Do they have a lobby there?
They do. They have a gift shop. I'm just saying because
in the
I'm
gift shop.
going to drop off a box of my books for them to sell. So
I don't know if mine would be welcome. My Stu is very different from your Stu.
Your Stu is a little scarier. So
my Stu commits mass murder.
Ooh.
Which I wrote about this week during our mini marathon yesterday, and during some of our sprints, and during some of my own writing. And it's been a grand old time trying to make sure I don't have the most graphic stuff on screen when we're streaming. So that's been
just
nice.
TK.
Yeah. My Stu scares Berlin.
So how did the mini marathon go yesterday, by the way? Abby and I were out with writing cohorts most of the day yesterday, but I saw that you guys were kicking butt.
It was fantastic. 4 hours of writing. Some people stayed for the whole time. If you did stay for the whole time and you're here or you're watching this after, let us know in the chat or in the comments. Robert stayed for one of mine, I think. I did 4. He did 4 of his own and co-hosted one with me. He made a lot of progress as well because he has a lot on the line when it comes to this one. But it was good because I was sick over the weekend and leading up to the weekend. I had 2 days of no writing and 2 days of like 900 words or something. So I still have a little bit of ground to make up. I think by tomorrow I'll be caught up to that goal of 1667 every day. But it was really nice to have that opportunity to be caught up. And
now you say that Robert has a lot on the line, but last year his punishment, if he did not meet his goal, was to have your face on his wallpaper, and it's been that way for a year. What more damage could you do
what could
to poor old Robert?
I thought you were going to say he had to tattoo Doug's face to him somehow.
Oh, that should be it, actually.
Doug.
But like the worst photo I can find of me.
Robert is one of the kindest, most humble people I know, and to have that hanging over his head is torture. Torture.
For those who are like Robert in both the kind way, but also how he phrases it, he is more motivated by negative stimulus than positive stimulus. His challenge to himself is that if he doesn't finish 50,000 words by the end of the month, he's going to delete everything that he has written this month. So I just shared his post in the chat there. His failure is not an option post. And I know some folks are riding along with him. I could not.
Literally makes me break out in hives.
Yeah, I'm like getting all I don't have the words for it. But like I'm very much a believer in positive reinforcement. Robert likes some positive reinforcement, but also likes his negative reinforcement.
I just want to point out that NJ is the first person who's had the guts to point out that Doug's beard is indeed fake.
How'd you know? Okay, let's talk about our stuff for the 60-day novel challenge. Let's talk about what we were working on this week and what we continue to be working on. And so we're following the 3-act structure more or less when it comes to this challenge. And our first week was the first act, the ordinary world inciting incident, the first plot point. The second act is the largest portion of your novel. Some people say it takes up 50% of it. For a lot of people, it takes up more than that. So we've broken it across 2 weeks for our lessons and for our curriculum in the 60-day template. This week, we are tackling the rising action. And the rising action is technically a plot beat, but it is really a series of beats. It's a series of scenes where your characters and your protagonist specifically encounter all of this stuff that they've never encountered before. Because if we think back to our first act, they were safe, they were cozy-ish in their ordinary world. They had their life, they had what was normal, and that's just how they existed. Now, whether that existence was happy life in the Shire, or like I think the Maze Runner in the second movie, I haven't read the books, I'm sorry. In the second movie, they're like out in the apocalyptic city wasteland thing, like running around doing their parkour stuff. That's their ordinary world. Not ordinary to us, but ordinary to them. So now in the second act, we've removed the protagonist from that, and they're in a very strange new world, and they're meeting new people, and they're making friends and enemies, and they're having their skills tested, and they're coming up short quite often. And so they're developing those skills, and they're learning on the fly, and they're making choices that often result in setbacks, but in some kind of growth. And along the way, the most important thing I want you to keep in mind is that their lie is still there, still present, and still trying to protect them. And all of these new things start picking away at that lie again and again. Now, that's important because this is representative of your character's internal conflict. Okay. As they're going through their story, all these things happening to them are going to test that lie. And sometimes they'll be like, oh, that's interesting. I want to, get closer to the truth. I want to learn a little bit more about this. And other times something nasty is going to happen. And so they retreat further into the lie, and the lie sinks its fangs into them even more and secures its hold. So it's a constant 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But if you're ever wondering what makes compelling rising action, you want to pick at this greatest flaw of theirs. Pick at the smaller flaws too. Pick at their weaknesses. But this is the target for this part of the second act, is how can we continually test this while raising the stakes. I just yapped for a good few minutes, and being sick need to tone it down a little bit. Hank, tell me a little bit about your rising action in your story. How, like, I know he establishes a podcast. I know that a murder has happened, and the townspeople start to get a little upset that they keep getting accused publicly. But tell me a little bit more.
And I have reached the point, kind of the midway, where Stu has made enemies of everyone in the town, because he believes that he is performing a righteous service to the town, because he does not have faith in the local law enforcement. They're all friends, but in his mind, because he lives in this perpetual world of solving crimes, because he's solving crimes in his fiction that he's writing and trying to break in. He's obsessed with this, and he's kind of reached the point where he knows more than everyone else. And on the surface, it feels like that he's getting to truth that everyone else is ignoring, when, he doesn't realize, that there are proper ways of doing things without just accusing the whole town. And we are at the point where Stu is actually onto a thread of truth, while also alienating the entire town and risking his relationship with Audrey. And his entire drive and purpose up to this point has been to become successful enough that he can then propose marriage to her and feel like he deserves her, and he's earned a place, and all of this. And now while he's pulling on a thread of truth, he's almost there, but not quite. He's alienating the small town that he's a part of, that is, has built him to this point. And his main big goal is coming unraveled because of his obsession with this. So it's very much a, there's he's almost there, but also alienating everyone at the same time. So very much rising tension, rising stakes, and big stakes.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to, can I pick this apart a
Yep.
little bit to just show my points here?
Yep.
Because everything that you said follows the theory of storytelling exactly, right? Which is to be expected from someone who's written a lot of books. But you have the original situation where Stu like doesn't feel worthy. He wants to be a writer. He wants to, be bigger than he is. And then the murder happens. Okay, act 1 done. We're into act 2. He starts making progress. He starts doing something that propels him towards that goal of feeling worthy and being a better version of himself. But there are setbacks along the way. When he makes an accusation, people get mad at him. And eventually that starts building up over and over again till the whole town is mad at him. Stakes are going up. But what's interesting from what you explained there, let's say it's a town of, I don't know, how many people in this town?
It's they're about 15,000 people.
Okay, so 15,000 people, all of them mad at him. Let's say every single one is mad at him just for the sake of math. And then there's tension between him and Audrey, right?
Yes.
And that one source of tension is 1 out of 15,000, but it is so much more important, and thus the stakes are so much higher.
Yes.
And I think some people get caught up in how do I raise the stakes? And they think like in video games and like tabletop games, we call it power creep when they add new things and it just gets to the point where the original thing is so pathetic compared to all the new stuff they're adding in. It doesn't have to be like that in a book. It doesn't have to be like, here's a little danger and then there's explosions and gunfire and then the world's falling apart. No, it's everyone can be mad at you building up over time, and then the one person who's mad at you is so much more important than all those other people. That's storytelling.
And to kind of stack on these stakes is that Audrey is a small business owner in this community, and her bookstore is like a central hub where people come and hang out and drink coffee and talk about the local gossip. And Stu has a little table in the corner where he writes every day, and people come and talk to him and all of this stuff. And now by association, she is, people are mad at her because they're mad at Stu, and the things that Stu is uncovering and sort of publicly accusing people of are all true. They're just maybe they're not murder, but in his mind, if this is true, then this other thing can be true. And so, it kind of spirals.
I love it. Awesome. Now, Abby, I've been fangirling over Hank's rising action here. And I know your chapter book is a little bit different, but is there anything you want to add in here about your story, about Hank's story, about a rising action in general?
I mean, mine is more, the middle of my book is more a series of 3 try-fail sequences.
Love it.
I mean, it's pretty basic, pretty classic, but in all 3, he's trying to get into the grocery store to try the cheese at the cheese tasting table. And in the meantime, he loses his lunchbox. But every character in the story has also lost something, which Stu heroically finds at the end in the dumpster when he recovers the not so lost and found box. So it's kind of my story. And in the first book, I had a series of 3 try-fail sequences. And that's just part of like the story engine that I'm using. It's that predictability that kids, it gives them the confidence to keep reading. And so it's a little different. I'm playing by different rules, but it's a series of try-fail, which is a classic thing that everyone is doing. You get your protagonist closer, and then 2 steps forward, 1 step back, sort of thing. So.
Exactly. Yeah. And we talk about try-fail cycles or sequences in the template as well. So I'm glad you brought it up. Great. I'll send you the money for that plug after. But those are so important because we want the protagonist to have wins during the rising action. We want there to be little sprinklings of success and growth and progress in there, but real growth and real realization and real testing of their lie and their other flaws comes from them trying a new thing and failing. And in that failing, they learn something, or they grow a connection with somebody else, or they try something else to get around this problem. And it's only through that effort that we can actually see them change, or that their change can be justified, right? If they're going through things and there's a big scary threat, like if there's a serial killer clown out there and they just, find the clue on the first try, or they win the foot chase on the first try and arrest them, and then they just interrogate them and get the information, what's the point? That's a retelling of a sequence of events. It's not a story, right? There's a difference there. So that's good. So that's fantastic. And I'd love to actually see in the chat if people can tell us about an instance in their rising action where your protagonist does not succeed. I'd love to see some of those pop up in the chat here. Because as we're going through that, there's other stuff that we layer into the rising action as well. Subplots, especially. You may have introduced the start of a subplot in your first act. You may have planted the seeds for it. It might have started to grow, but it's really in the second act where we introduce some or grow the ones that we've already introduced. And there's no formula for me to tell you how to do this. I can't give you the golden secret to writing a subplot, because subplots, if you go back to our work in the first month of the challenge, subplots are driven by secondary characters, or driven by the theme, or driven by other conflicts and relationships that you have in there. But it's in the rising action where you get to start exploring those different things, where you get to think about, how does the relationship my protagonist has with this character start to affect the story? Hank's story is a perfect example of that. The relationship that Stu has with Audrey affects everything that Stu does. And so as he's pursuing his external conflict and working towards his goal, it has ramifications on something else going on in the story that then loops back and affects him in turn. That's how you want to start thinking about subplots, is that they are there and they are affected by the story, or they affect the story, but this is where we really start to see their development. Hank, do you have any other subplots going on in Murder Town?
I've got not really, because it's I mean, you could say the no, that's really, it's the podcast and how that affects the town. And then Stu's constantly checking up on his relationship with Audrey and things are, but it's pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of there's not room for a lot of side tangents, honestly.
That's true, especially if you're writing a 50,000 word book. It's just not that much real estate.
Yeah.
Right. For me, I have the toe stubbing curse that has been laid on my character in the first chapter.
Wait, and, what curse?
The toe stubbing curse. She stubs her toe. And she can't
fantastic
die.
Actually.
Thank you. She can't die because she's some kind of monster, which, if you put something like that in your story, when we're talking about stakes in a story, that eliminates a pretty big stake, right? Death is a big thing. It's scary. Yeah. And if your character can't die, then that's something you can't threaten them with, right? Now we can talk about how most main characters don't actually have the threat of death because they have to make it through the story for the story to be completed. And that's a theory conversation we can talk about later. But as a result, I'm introducing the subplot. So the scene that I'm writing right now, she's going to be in a foot chase with a clown, interrupted one of the should stop saying murders, because that's going to get us blocked on YouTube or something. But she interrupts it and chases the clown, and this curse is going to come into effect. And I've sprinkled it in before, but it's going to come into effect where she stubs her toe, falls, actually breaks her toe, and the clown gets away. Right. And so it directly impacts the plot, but it also, I have it coming in ways that aren't direct obstacles. She also stubbed her toe in a shop and broke a whole lot of artisanal pottery and then had to pay for it, and work's been rough lately, so that's not great for the bank account. So it's nice. It's been fun to incorporate that. But as I'm writing this as well, another subplot's emerging between the relationship between her and this other secondary character who is very similar to her, but also a lot more militant, a lot more sycophantic is how I described her in monster hunting. And so they clash heads a lot. And so that's leading to its own kind of subplot that doesn't get fully resolved by the end, but is still interesting to pursue and have it affect her character development and the story at the same time.
I really like the toe stubbing curse because it's like the death from 1,000 paper cuts. Like that, there's never any threat that she's going to lose her head, but it's the little annoyances that just stack up and thwart everything that I had a conversation with Lee Child one time about how do you have stakes in a Jack Reacher book, because we all know Jack Reacher's never going to die. So how do you build tension about that? And his coy response was, well, Reacher doesn't die, but Reacher loves people.
Exactly. Yeah. You threaten the characters around them.
Right.
That's
you're right. Yeah. So
awesome. And so I'm also checking in the chat here where people are dropping in all these things from their story, and I love seeing it. I'm not gonna go through and point out individual ones because there's a fair bit of text going on here, but it's awesome reading them.
Yeah.
Great job, everybody. Awesome. Bond's asking if my character heals. Yeah, my character does heal, and she actually heals pretty quickly, which lets me do a lot of other things in the story when it comes to stakes. But for the toe subbing specifically, it starts out as like she stubs her toe on the way out of being cursed from this witch, and it just trips going up the stairs. And then it gets to the point where she stubs her toe so hard that it like shatters. The bone shatters, which hurts, like because she heals, but it still really freaking hurts. But it will heal, and so it's an obstacle I can put in her way that I have developed this whole time that gets more and more intense. So it doesn't just feel like a throwaway, because that's the last thing I want, is to just be like, oh, you have a toe stubbing curse, and I'm going to throw it in the worst moments possible just so you continually mess up because you stub your toe. You can only use that trick once or twice. So I'm using it in other ways too, to like develop or to have conflict between characters. Oh, you let the clown get away because you're clumsy, right? That's how the more militant character is going to view it. Not that you're cursed by this witch and it's not your fault that they got away. So.
I had this vision in my head of this character who has all these broken toes, and they've all healed funky because their toes are just all splayed, and they can't wear shoes, and they have to go through life with flip-flops on. And
maybe I'll get her to have to like re-break her toe because it heals improperly.
Stop it!
You won't find this in Stu the Duck. This is only Stu the Clown where this happens.
Imagine breaking a webbed foot.
Speaking of Stu the Clown, though, the rising action is a great time for you to introduce your antagonist to your story as well. And there are a couple ways that you can do this. You can introduce them directly by having them be on screen, or having a scene from their perspective, or multiple scenes from their perspective, or you show the ramifications or the outcomes of the antagonist's action. Now, Hank, I want to ask you, because it seems more like okay, well, let's answer this first, and then I'll ask you the question. Abby, you want to tell us what's going on with the stews?
So I started off writing this book, Stu the Duck, based on an actual duck that's very locally famous here at the Wildlife Sanctuary. And I think without knowing that my main character for the 60-day novel challenge was Stu, Hank started writing a book where, honest to God, the first main character's name is Stu Weber. Really, which I'm like, I'm writing a duck. He's writing Stu Weber.
Stu Weber is a character that was first published in 2016, and I have the copyright notice to prove it.
Stu the Duck probably wasn't born in 2016, so you get credit for the original Stu. How about that? I'll give that to you.
I don't need credit. I'm happy to share. This is just a beautiful serendipity that we get to be involved in.
Just another example that Hank and I are just the same person in two different bodies. And so then we decided Doug also needed to have a Stu. So we pulled him in. We allowed Doug to be part of the Cool Kids Club.
We welcomed him into the club with open arms.
And he agreed. So he named his clown Stu. And then I think we got Robert involved, and now we're trying to get everybody to write a Stu in their story. It's just like the crazy
I think Robert has some sort of creepy Lovecraftian monster named Stu,
I was
doesn't
going
he?
to say, I thought it was like a sea serpent named Stu or something.
Yeah,
So,
Leviathan.
It's gonna have some fantasy name, like it's gonna be Stu and then apostrophe and then like 5 consonants and then another an apostrophe or a dash and then the rest of the
Stu
name.
for short.
Yeah, Stu for short.
Yeah.
Anyway, so for antagonist, so my antagonist is Stu the Clown. But you can bring the antagonist, or if you haven't already, because Ella said here, my antagonist has been in the story since chapter 1, which is perfectly okay. It's more that you want to make sure that your antagonist is introduced sometime in the rising action, and their power is also introduced. Now, power doesn't necessarily mean magic powers or sword play or what have you, but the control that they have in your story. Hank, I still have a question for you, but I'm just going to explain this real quick.
Okay.
The one of the defining differences between a protagonist and an antagonist is how much control they have, or how much agency they have over things that are going on in the story. So until we hit the midpoint of the story and the stuff that comes after, which we're talking about next week, your protagonist is very reactive. Okay, they have their goal, and I think I've explained this before in these live streams, but they have their goal. They have their reasons to pursue their goal, given to them largely from the first act, but stuff is happening around them. They're in this brand new world during the rising action, and they're just trying to keep their head above water. They're just trying to dodge all these blows coming and just making their way to the goal, right? The antagonist is the antagonist is different than that. They have their own goals, they have their own motivations, but they have a lot more agency and control and proactivity when the story starts. So while they're pursuing their goal, which is in direct conflict with the protagonist's goal, they feel like they are in a lot more control because they literally are in more control than the protagonist. And this extends to like inhuman antagonists as well. If nature is the antagonist in your story and it's a survival story, nature has a heck of a lot more agency than the character who is at the whims of nature throughout the whole story, right? But this also extends to someone, leaving their small medieval village to go on a quest, and they're constantly up against this, evil zombie knight that has their own mission and has been practicing with their sword and magic for 500 years or something, right? Those are two different circumstances, but the roles of those two different characters are the same. Now, Hank, my question for you is, who's the antagonist in Murder Town?
Well, I can't tell you that.
Okay.
but I will tell you, because the comment about I forget who posted it, that they introduced their antagonist in the beginning. If you were writing a murder mystery specifically, the sooner you can introduce this hidden antagonist, the better. Because the goal of a great murder mystery is at the end, and I've read tons of murder mysteries, and the reaction that you're soliciting from the reader is, oh my goodness, it was right in front of me. I should have gotten this way sooner, but you don't want them to get it. You want them to think that they could have gotten it, but it's hidden right in front of their face the entire time. And so if you're writing this specific genre, and other genres not so much, but if you're writing a murder mystery, you want to introduce that antagonist as soon as possible and cloak it to the point that they could have solved it if they would have just realized. But you don't want them to realize. So that's the trick that you're always writing around, and that you want it to be in front of their face and them not realize it the whole time.
Love it. Great advice. And I think it's also important to realize that we talk about the antagonist in the challenge as like the antagonist, but there are also usually multiple antagonists to some degree in a story. There's often the main one, the zombie knight, Stu the clown, the secret antagonist in Hank's story, but then there are other antagonistic forces as well who might support the main antagonist, or they might just compete with the protagonist in some other way throughout the story. So I just wrote a scene where they went to a vampire's nest where it's all these young, recently turned vampires cooking I need to mind what I'm saying. Cooking METH to help fund their ne'er-do-well activities. Very different than Stu the Duck, remember? Very different story. And so those vampires were an antagonistic force because they knew something that my character needed for the investigation, but obviously they weren't going to tell her without some coercion involved, without some conflict in there. Spoiler, there are other serial killing clowns in the story, not just Stu, and they are other antagonistic forces as well, but they're not the main one. The main one is Stu. And I think, Hank, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like the town is an antagonist as well because this podcast keeps calling them out.
Yeah, the town as a collective. Yeah.
Go ahead, Abby.
Doug, are you spelling it STEW? Because I think that's a better choice of spellings for you.
I went with STU.
You went with STU?
STU, yeah.
I feel like your Stu would stew people up. That's why I was like...
I did just, okay, I really got to tone this down for stream. I did just refer to somebody as human soup in a bone and flesh bowl. So,
oh God, Doug. Oh.
And that's the last I'll say of the prose that I used today because it was icky.
Yeah, that's the last.
Poor Hank. Poor Hank.
And I'm the one writing a murder mystery, and here you are just cooking folks up.
I brought it up. I started it.
But
it's your fault for things too.
Yeah, but it didn't take much to stir Doug up.
No.
It's true. We don't monetize the channel. So we aren't in danger of losing monetization status, but I do need to, I think, tone it down on how much I reference certain things. Yeah. So in the chat, aside from just saying how creepy my clowns are, which they are, I'd love to hear more about some antagonists from your stories as well. So if you're in the chat with us, or if you're watching this afterwards, drop it in a comment below. Tell us about your antagonists. I know that some people have mentioned their antagonists so far, but there's also a lot of talk about King Stu going on in there, which I haven't been keeping up with, but Abby, you can recap me afterwards, I think.
Okay.
But
I've not been paying attention to you. I've been watching the chat, so
that's okay. Teamwork. Okay, and see, Ella gets me, so that's good. I got some support there. Okay, and there's not much more I want. Sorry,
I was just telling Ella that you need no encouragement.
There's not much more to say about the rising action beyond your character is trying to pursue the goal that they adopted when the inciting incident happened and when they paused to reflect on that in the first plot point. And now they're in this new place and these things are happening and they're meeting all these good and bad people, but really focus in on that lie aspect of them. What is their lie, and how can you create obstacles in the rising action that directly compete with what that lie is telling that character? Yeah. Right? So classic example is in a romance or a rom-com where they have the lie that love isn't real or love's not worth it or whatever. This is when they start going on dates with the love interest and they start having fun and they start seeing that people can be romantic and people can be heartfelt in that, okay, maybe love is possible. They don't admit that yet. They don't accept that yet. But every time that they go on a date, that lie gets picked at, right? And it starts chipping away at its armor and exposing what's underneath, the ugly, messy thing underneath. But at the same time, you want instances where the love interest is texting someone and doesn't let the protagonist see who it is. Okay, is it an ex? Is it someone else they're seeing? Right. And so then the lie gets bolstered as well. It wraps itself around the character and says, you need me because something bad could happen. Right. Or there's an argument and that argument, they're like, okay, this is the worst thing ever. I don't need to deal with this. I can just be by myself. Right. It's this constant back and forth of the lie being relaxing its hold because of what's happening and then tightening its hold. And that all builds up to a really soul-crushing, devastating moment we call the midpoint, but that is the topic of next week's lesson and live stream. So we'll cut that there and we'll turn to some questions that we've banked up here. Abby, do you want to you want to pick a question for us?
Yeah, I've been trying to mark them as they come through. So let's just go right down. You want to just go right down the line, or do you want me to sort of jump around?
Do whatever you want.
I'm just a go right down the line kind of gal.
Okay.
Okay. First question from Bon. According to my planning, I'm at about 80% of the way through my manuscript, but I have about 32,000 words. Any thought on what I should do to add words, or should I just reassess? This is like the perfect Hank question, because I know Hank's strategy.
Yeah, this is the perfect opportunity to onion that bad boy. So this is what I do, and what several writers that I know do. Write out a chapter and get the bones of what happens. So write that chapter from beginning to end, just the way you see it unfolding. And then go back to the beginning, start reading over that chapter. And as you read it, invariably there will come other sentences, yea, even paragraphs that help you to really flesh out the sense of this place, this event, whatever, and just write that into the text. And maybe your character gets up and gets dressed, and then you think, well, how would I describe that? What are they putting on? And is there a purpose to why they're putting up? Maybe it's a cold day outside. And instead of saying it's a cold day, maybe you have them sifting through their closet and they, pick out a sweater, or, whatever, whatever helps you to describe.
Show it.
Yeah. To show what's going on in the world, instead of telling your, and maybe in your kind of bones of the chapter that you wrote previously, maybe you wrote in there that it's cold, but this is an opportunity for you to show that it's cold, not just tell us that it's cold. So have them go through, sifting through clothes, and maybe there's some memory attached to this sweater that's hiding in the back of the closet. And maybe, this was a gift from, grandmother, 3 Christmases ago. And, when you kind of latch on to little details like that, it opens up all of the possibility for the story, and you just go through and you just add texture to that. And then if you want to go back to the top again, read back through it, look at the detail that you just added, and make sure that it makes sense in the context of where you plugged it in, clean up those rough edges, look for other opportunities. And then before you know it, that 400 word chapter that you wrote is 3,500 words. And that's how I do it. And it feels very natural, and it doesn't feel like you're just kind of meeting an arbitrary goal by doing it that way.
I always think add some interiority, because I think a lot of us end up leaving that out oftentimes on the first draft. Like, why does whatever it is that is happening, what does it mean to your character? You might think the reader's going to figure out what it means, but don't leave them guessing. Be really explicit and tell them what this situation means to the character, because it's going to help everything make so much more sense. And I think oftentimes that's also something that gets left off the page. It's in our head. We think we're showing it, and we're not. And we have to layer that little bit of interiority in. So I think that's another really good place. I find that's what I layer in most often. I'm really good usually at the world building pieces the first time through. It's that interiority piece that I tend to miss. So that's what I know myself, know thyself, right? I know myself. So that's usually what I look for when I go back in and add those layers.
And I'm the exact opposite of you, Abby. World building is my weak point, but interiority is my strong. I'm very big on navel gazing, like going deep on why I feel this way about it, and that sort of thing. And I need to tell you that it's actually cold. I need to tell you that this actually takes place on Earth, because you would have no way of knowing that if I didn't, spell it out sometimes. But what I've noticed is that you think that when you're onioning back over that, it's very easy to add a whole lot of words that you didn't expect to, because now you're looking to describe things in a different way, and you kind of shift gears in your mind a little bit. And what I would say is, don't be afraid to kind of oversell the chapter, because then when you go back in your second draft or your third draft, you can trim out some of those words, and if you're overly verbose, you can trim that stuff down. But it's a whole lot easier to take a 4,000 word chapter, trim it down to 3,500, than it is to have a smaller chapter and try to expand that out. So don't be afraid to oversell it a little bit, and don't worry about that in your first draft, because that's second, third draft problems, and that's when you tighten it up and figure out how can I take these 3 sentences and say that in 1 sentence, and that's editing problems. That's not first draft problems.
Yeah, what do you think, Doug? I think it's easier to take stuff out too than it is to add it in. I tend to be a pretty tight writer sometimes. So oftentimes I'll think of something that I want to add in, and I can't find a good spot to slide it in there because everything just holds together so nicely. And it is way easier for me to just be like, where do you fall?
I think it's easier to like trim, in that it's easier to say, okay, that's there, and that's a little much, slash. But for me in my drafting process, I am a little more concise, especially with action. And so it's in the second draft or the third draft when I go back and I add those show don't tell moments, when, like right now in this scene, my characters come up to like a manor, not even a mansion, it's like a manor, right, with wings and trimmed hedges and a fountain and whatnot. There's a body in the fountain.
Oh, ruin fountains for me, Doug.
And like I include some details, but if I really want to dial in on the affluence of this family that's in there and how grandiose this place is, I know I need to sprinkle in a few more details, because I want to contrast that with what's going on inside. And I won't explain that because I already alluded to some soup earlier. So that's what I like to do. But I know as I'm writing quickly, as I'm sprinting, as I'm trying to get this draft done by the end of the month, I'm not going to sit there and wait for like 5 minutes while I come up with the best way to show wealth in this setting. Right? That's a later problem for me.
You mentioned... Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, can I throw in a piece of practical advice? Something that I started doing last year is when I'm editing, when I'm taking out those, instead of deleting them, I strike through those words. That way, they're removed. In my mind, they're removed, but the remnant of it is still there. And when I'm going back and doing my second and third draft editing, I can at least see what my thought process was. Even though I've removed it effectively, I still see, like, okay, now I remember now what the tone was I was going for, or whatever it is, and that helps me to stay kind of tuned into the emotion of a scene.
By the way, for the 58 novel challenge, and you're trying to hit 50,000 words, don't delete your ding dong words, people. Just strike through and keep writing. Like, not saying to cheat, but you could cheat.
Well, and you shouldn't be removing anything at this point, because this is first draft, and you don't delete words in the first draft.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, Doug mentioned being slim on his action, just being real concise with it. So here's the question. The next question.
Wait, sorry, before we do this, as a smooth transition, but I want to add something to the answer for Bon, if I may. And because we tackled the prose level answer for that, but it may very well be, and I'm going to share my screen here because I think this warrants a very crude diagram. It's just paint. It's just Microsoft.
I'm all about
paint.
A crude diagram. I'm not going to lie.
Let me make this.
Doug, I feel like we're in class and you're at the board with the chalk.
Exactly. That's exactly what's happening. So let's say here's the start of your story. Here's your story. Here's the climax. Okay.
Oh, I love a timeline.
You can label that. You can label that. You know what's where, and then there's also the resolution and the end of your story afterwards. But this is important because this is where your external conflict and your internal conflict come together. They get resolved there. That's the end of the actual like story part of the story, and the rest is wrap up and setting up for a sequel maybe. Bon, if you're thinking that your story is not long enough, then you might want to make something like this and go through and I don't know, let's say blue for the external conflict, and there's a major beat here, there's a major beat here, something cool happens here, 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 and then there's the climax where it happens. And then go through with a different color and the internal conflict. Okay, there's a little reflection here. This actually hits both internal, external, here, 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 blah, blah, whatever. Go through and mark in some kind of timeline where important things happen. And if you end up with something that looks like this, then you probably have enough for your story, and it doesn't matter how long you want it to be, it's probably as long as it should be. But if you're at 36,000 words and you're saying you're like 80% of the way through your story, so somewhere in this point, then it's more likely that like your timeline, your timeline is looking some more like this, with like only a couple of beats. And when you map it out like this, you can see that when we have like 3 big things happening externally and all of these internal things happening in between, okay, we haven't had enough external stuff happen to warrant this internal development. Or it might be reversed and you don't have enough internal development despite all the external stuff happening. So a simple diagram like this, a simple reflection, looking at your plot grid, seeing it from that 1,000-foot view, can let you know if you have enough stuff to warrant the development that you want in your story, to justify them going from, how do I get back to my pen here? From here to here, right? That's my structural answer for you.
Doug doesn't have an art degree. I'm just.
That
was so painful for me to watch.
I don't. Is this not beautiful,
lines.
Hank?
How are you screwing up lines, Doug?
Is this not beautiful?
I thought those were sick people at the end at first. I was like, I don't know where's that.
Doug, I think you're a fantastic writer.
Thank you. Thank you.
Stick to what you know, Doug.
I'm gonna draw Abby real quick.
You're gonna draw me with the middle finger. I don't know why.
Man, to quote Michael Jackson, just beat it.
All right. Sorry.
Well, you already ruined my smooth transition. So
yeah, it was a great transition.
Man, I worked on that one too for a hot minute. All right. Let's move on to Ella's question. How do you know when you have enough action on the page? And so hers, I think, isn't really about expanding the amount of words for your action scene, but more action and moments of rest.
Yeah. Well, if we go back, no, I'm kidding. But it's the action is there to serve a purpose, right? And I think we've said this before, where you can't just have a car chase in your story for the sake of having an exciting car chase in your story. Even like your most pulpy action adventure stories don't have that kind of thing in them. The car chase introduces a complication because they crash into something at the end of it, or someone gets, it gets thrown out of the car and they have to go rescue them or something. It adds in a complication. And so you have enough action when that action justifies the reaction and the thinking and the growth and the stress and the conflict in the character and between characters after it. You like, if you want to throw a sword fight in, then it's the ramifications of the sword fight, or the fact that they've been training for so long, but then they lost the sword fight. And so then they have to go back to their mentor and they have to learn more and they have to realize hard truths about themselves until they become a better warrior to go back and try the sword fight again. The action is there just to spur on these other things that are happening. And action, to be clear, I've described very dynamic things, a car chase and a sword fight, but an argument is action. Taking a test is action. Like, action in this case being something where you try to achieve a goal, and then this is our scene and sequel discussion again. You try to achieve a goal, and then the fallout of that or the reaction of that is what's most important.
Yeah, and if you, I understand what you're asking, Ella. But a lot of times we'll we'll read craft books or things like that, and invariably they'll have like the structure of the manuscript broken down, and at the 35% mark this should happen, and the 44% mark this should happen, and you should have 48% action beats in your story. And I understand what people are trying to do when they highlight those things in a book, that there should be a balance on balance. But writing to a formula like that is going to read like you wrote to a formula. Like Doug was saying, if you have an action sequence, make sure that it's an earned action sequence, and make sure that it sets up an emotional sequence. Then, there should be cause and effect. There should be beats that are earned. Just make sure that your story is alive, and those things will kind of handle themselves, I've found.
Sorry, you can also, I'm going to share my Dabble project here. So this is my 60-day novel challenge project. And what I've done here is gone through, and on each scene, I've labeled it with yellow or blue or purple. Yellow being a scene. Again, I hate that it's called the same thing as a scene, but an action instance. And then the blue being the reaction instance. So for example, I'm writing this one right now, interrupt the clown's murder. I'm not even going to try and like censor myself now. It's too late. We're too far gone. Interrupt the clown's murder here. And then here, I just labeled it debrief, but they talk about what they discovered in that crime scene after the clown got away, right? And they form their plan for what comes next. But then here, I actually have 2 action scenes in a row, and I have 2 sequel scenes in a row. You don't necessarily have to. There's no rule that says these have to be perfectly balanced, but this is a scene where she's trying to pursue something related to the toe stubbing curse, and then they get a call that, hey, there's another thing going on here, right? And so there's no time for reaction. So I need a little bit longer to just digest what's been going on. And sometimes the reaction to action takes more than a single scene. It could take a couple chapters. Like when we think about, and I'm going to make our faces normal size again, when we think about the first plot point in the first act, the inciting incident was one scene. Something happened. And then the scenes following that are all the first plot point where they're reacting to something. Now, they could be in those scenes going and trying to figure something out. They could be collecting gear for an adventure, and that's a little bit of action unto itself. But they're really diving deep into themselves to see if they can go on this quest, and talking to their mom who wants them to stay, but they can't stay because they have to go and prove themselves. And they're talking to their teacher who gives them, the magic pen they need to go on this adventure or whatnot, right? There's multiple scenes in there, but they're all in reaction to this action that happened. Is Abby muted for anyone else or just me?
It was me. It's because I was coughing. Sorry, the flu has gone through my house. I'm hoping I didn't get it. So Ella had the second question that was sort of related to the first one about balancing high stakes and tension with low stakes and just less tension. So I think we kind of.
Yeah, I think, do you guys think it's fair to say that there should be more reflection and like emotional scenes than action-packed ones?
I think it depends on what you're writing.
Yeah.
Don't you think? Because some genres, like think about, thrillers. I would think a thriller would have more action scenes than reflection. But I also don't read a lot of thrillers.
Yeah. Like,
so
here's the thing. When we have moments of reflection and emotion, the stakes don't disappear. And in fact, we often want to highlight them during this time because this is when we realize how important they are. So like in an action scene or like a high octane, exciting scene, the stakes are evident because there's a gun pointed at you or because there's a hostage or something, right? But it's in the moments afterwards where we realize just how scary that was to someone, just how much it tugged at their lie. We learn that a character has a family who's in danger now. Like there are all these things that we learn, and the stakes still have to be high in those response moments. They have to be high in those emotional moments, even if they're not immediately threatening, if that makes sense.
I guess I just think about there are people out there that are also writing what I call quiet stories.
Mm-hmm.
And they are stories that are not necessarily action packed. They're more social dramas. They're more personal growth sort of stories. Like I had a girlfriend who was working on a book once, and it was about a young girl who was trying to get into one of the local magnet school high schools. You had to apply to it, but she wanted to convince her parents to let her go into the theater program and not the mathematics program. And like this was, essentially the whole point of the book. There were no car chases, there were no murderous clowns, there's no life or death. It was just her growing in the way that she wanted to grow.
You just described the entire genre of literary fiction.
Pretty much,
which is not bereft of action, though.
Actually, right? As we talk about this, I think about that a lot. That there was like a comment today in the community from somebody that they were like, the formula is like I don't know, whatever they said. It's like the antithesis of art or whatever. And I'm like, well, that's actually not true. Like, as someone with an art degree, I can tell you the more parameters that you put on your creativity, the more creative you actually are within those bounds.
Yep.
But also for like the literary fiction people, I feel like the non-formula is the formula. Like that is the formula that they're following, is trying to not be like another sort of genre book. But that's why I think sometimes these questions are really, really hard to answer, because I think our answers probably work for a majority of the people out there. Mm-hmm, but there are going to be people listening that are like, I don't want to lead them in the wrong direction if they're writing a book that's not meant to be this action-packed, sort of thriller book.
So for those folks, I want to just make sure they know that action, when we talk about action in storytelling, it doesn't necessarily mean like the pow action. It often does, because I think it's fair to say that the vast majority of dabblers and people who attend these shows and are participating in the challenge are writing fantasy or romantasy or romance. And even romance, TW was asking here, I guess romance would be more reflective, maybe. Not the case. It seems like it is, but when you think about action as like an argument between someone, as someone trying to prove themselves to somebody else, as someone like going and studying in the library for a test, is action, right? It's not the same action as a fight, but it's action.
It's anything that moves your plot forward is action.
So yes, when they're trying to accomplish something, action.
Yeah. So keep that in mind, because I think people think if they don't have the fight scenes, then they don't have the action, when that's not the case. So
yeah.
I think that's what I was trying to get at, and you sort of summed it up there for me a little better.
It's tough because my examples will often default to action, because that's just what I write. That's what I watch. That's what I read. That's what I listen to. Right?
I did write a car chase once, but it was a rat driving a roller skate. And so I don't know that that's the same.
I love writing. I love how different stories can be. That's
okay.
So basically people doing stuff. Yeah, they want to accomplish something. And doing stuff could also involve sitting in your room, not actually going anywhere, but you're still trying to accomplish something. And then avoid something. And the reaction, the emotional part of it, there's still emotions in the actions, right? I feel like I need to clarify that. But the next part where you react to what happened, you're reacting to the outcome or lack thereof and the difficulty along the way. And you're reorienting to pursue your goal in a different way now.
Okay, let's do this next question. AR asks, is this enough of a subplot for my contemporary romance? My male main character sleeps with Andrea before the female main character comes on the scene. Later, the female main character will find out and cause issues between them. My only question is, And I'm saying this because I once outlined a romance and had Michelle Hazen, who is a romance author and a book coach herself. She tore my outline up because I had the main character kiss someone who was not the female main character over the course of the story. And she was like, oh, you can't do that. And so I'm now under the impression that that is a genre expectation. So my question is, does the male main character sleep with the other lady off stage and you don't see it? And if that's the case, I think that's okay. But if you see it on the page, apparently I got yelled at for a kiss. So I could only imagine.
I think it depends on your tropes too, because some like a love triangle is going to have all.
And see, and I did not have a love triangle.
Yeah.
And so it was what is it called when they don't know who the other one is? They like Roxanne, that Steve Martin movie.
Yeah. The Cyrano de Bergerac.
It was a Cyrano de Bergerac retelling was what I was doing. And now I can't think of it. Obviously, I didn't finish this book, y'all. So
So it looks like the male main character sleeps with Andrea before or we meet our female main character, or at least like.
So I would think that would be okay to put in there because it's not.
Yeah. And I would say every good romance, you're going to have your two main characters start falling in love, and then there's going to be the issue that comes up that pulls them apart, and then the climax of that is them resolving the issue and living happily ever after. So this would be a good use of the wedge that seems to split our main character. I would say, and this is as someone that does not write romance, but I've read a fair amount. I would say don't explicitly show that in the first book, but maybe allude to it in a way that causes the rift between the main characters. Like it can be a thing, but if it's too much of a thing, it's going to need to be a love triangle, like Doug brought up a minute ago. So if it's not, have it off stage, but bring it on in a way that causes the rift between the main characters that has to be resolved.
And the only reason to harp on
my answer is yes, question mark.
I was going to say the only reason why I think we're even harping on this is I get the feeling that romance readers are vicious.
Oh, they are. And they are hardcore about their tropes.
They love their tropes.
Yes.
So research your trope.
Yeah.
And figure out if that's a thing that you can do.
Every other genre tries to hide their tropes, subvert them a little bit. Not romance. They want you to explicitly tell them what your tropes are, and they're going to sign up depending on what you're selling them. And
they want to be slapped in the face with it.
Yes. That's only romance that's like that I know of. I mean, maybe horror. I don't know. I kind of think horror is even more. They expect more subtlety than that.
Yeah. It depends. It depends on the reader. But I want to point out Ella's comment saying if it can be solved with a simple conversation, then maybe not. And that's what I want to point out too, is that does the male main character continue talking to Andrea? Does Andrea come back up in parts of the story? Because if it's just it happened at the start or even before the book started, and then it comes up as a source of conflict, does it feel earned enough to be conflict? Does it feel like a conversation could have, resolved this? Or does it actually, like, to be a subplot, there has to be development. There has to be something that happens a couple times throughout the story to impact the story when it does come up. Otherwise, it's just someone referencing something that happened off screen or a single point that happened before the relationship started, and it feels a little bit cheap to me that way.
I feel like there needs to be some stakes to it that possibly he runs the risk of rekindling a romance with Andrea. Like it needs to be to that point. Like, and just dragging up an incident from the past is not enough, but an incident from the past that threatens their future. Now that's some stakes.
What's the misunderstanding there?
Right.
Because I would imagine there would be a misunderstanding where she thinks he's getting back together and he doesn't. He thinks he's innocent, and there's
Andrea's the nanny. Okay, that's a crucial piece of information here.
Oh.
Okay.
So how scarred are the kids? That's what I need to know.
Okay, yeah, that was a critical part.
Yeah,
in the chat to that.
We're over here grasping for straws, and you were holding back the critical information.
Well, it sounds like you got some good action there. So,
yeah, I think that's enough for a subplot right there. That's enough for a plot itself.
Yeah, that is the plot. What are you talking about? That is the plot.
That could be I'm pretty sure there's a new psychological horror movie on Disney Plus where that is the plot.
Yeah.
So
okay. Oh my gosh. All right, so we've got some antagonist questions. Do we want to shift gears now that we've bungled that one?
Go ahead.
All right. Ella says, what if your antagonist is revealed to be evil until the end? I think, do you mean what if your antagonist isn't revealed to be evil until the end?
Yep.
I hint at the fact that she's evil, and she does have control over the two protagonists. It sounds like you're trying to work in a bit of a plot twist. Mm-hmm. I got a class for you.
I'll find the link for that.
I was about to go look for it.
Okay, you do that, because I have stuff to say about this.
You talk, I'll find the class.
Okay. That's completely okay, because if you remember when we were talking about this 30 minutes ago, I said there are 3 ways you can bring in the antagonist here, and I'm going to try and not bungle up my paraphrasing of myself. But you can introduce them in a scene from like the protagonist point of view. You can have their own perspective scenes where we see it through their point of view, or you can show the ramifications or the consequences of their actions. And this is going to fall into that third camp. You're going to have, whether or not you explicitly show it, and it sounds like you're not, sounds like this is going to be a secret until it's revealed towards the end, but you're going to have this antagonist doing things that cause things to happen to get in the way of the protagonist. Okay, they're going to do things that create obstacles to directly impact the protagonist. We're just not going to know who they are or why they're doing it necessarily. We'll learn more about who they are mysteriously. We'll learn maybe a bit about their motives through secondhand sources, through survivors of whatever they did, through witnesses, through people who know them, who maybe we meet along the way and know this identity. But we won't actually know all of their motives and whatnot until the very end when it's revealed in a plot twist. But this is totally okay in my book.
Yeah, I agree.
Any thoughts?
You got anything to say?
No, I don't have anything to add to that.
I've got a second antagonist question. Can an event be the antagonist?
No. Antagonist is a type of character. An event can have a negative impact.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. It can be antagonistic, I guess, in that it is something that prevents the character from doing something.
What if man versus nature, an avalanche?
But the avalanche is going to trigger behavior in your characters, and that's your antagonist.
Okay, there we go.
Okay. So then, an avalanche traps a group of hikers, and then 3 days later they're hungry and they start looking at which one of them they're going to eat. Like that's
yeah.
What if the avalanche is sentient?
Right.
Well, then it's a character.
Yeah, that's
in that case too. It's not even the avalanche is the antagonist. It's just nature and the cold and the environment they're in is the antagonist, and the avalanche is one part of that.
Yeah,
right.
Abby Lovecraft.
I'm just saying, I did write this whole story where the ocean was a character, and the ocean helped deliver messages in the bottles and things like that.
That's Moana.
It is like Moana. So I know Doug is obsessed with Moana, or so we all.
It's such a good movie, and the soundtrack is so good. All right, but no, an event can't be the antagonist, but an event can be negative and get in the way of the protagonist. It's just not a character.
Yeah. I like to think that an event can trigger antagonistic responses in other characters. That's a good way to think of it, is that what is this going to do to my other characters that will then pit them against each other? That's not true in every situation, but that's just a good way to start thinking about it.
This is our only NJ question so far. Usually NJ keeps us going. Man, all right. So NJ says, I feel like I have too much world building to communicate my story. How do I keep the world building streamlined so it doesn't become expose on just my world and not the plot? And I think
no idea, NJ.
Right now, we're just saying you just write it and you cut it later, right?
Yeah. Yeah, this is the entire reason I don't write epic fantasy.
So it's kind of yes to that. I kind of agree with you too in that case, in that you don't worry about it now because we're drafting. We're in a challenge right now. We're trying to get a lot of words out. NJ, I know that your reward for yourself for hitting 50,000 words is going to be Dabble Lifetime, I'm pretty sure is what you're aiming for. If that's the case, then you come and join me in Dabble U Academy, because we have a workshop on this. I have a script for a course on this that I'm going to record in the new year. We do world building Wednesday every month, and in fact, the next one is next Wednesday. There's a lot of world building stuff going on in Dabble U Academy. This, without explaining everything I've ever talked about with world building, one of our golden rules is it has to serve the plot, right? Your world serves your story. And so there's leeway in fantasy, especially in sci-fi, for more details to add immersion. And there's ways that we can enhance world building to make it feel more authentic to the character. But you really got to think about, why am I including this? Ask yourself why. And then at the same time, show don't tell is your best friend for world building. The more that you show something, the more organic it feels. The more you tell elements of your world building, the more it feels like an essay or a textbook or just a description of a place. We want to experience the world through the character and how they view it. We don't want a list of stuff that exists in the world. So those are my two big tips. Focus on why, and then show don't tell. But a lot of show don't tell comes, as we've said already, in the revisions. That's when you're perfecting your prose.
Hank, I know you say world building's not your
it's not my forte. So
I go crazy with it.
Yeah, I defer to the two of you.
I go crazy with it, and I'm not gonna lie. Like, so the stories that I write with Jeff, my co-writer, it's our favorite ding dong thing to do. And there's so many jokes worked in, and it's just, we come up with the craziest things. And one of us suggests something which takes the other one off. And next thing we know, we're on this huge world building tangent. And it's so hard to get rid of sometimes. But I think if you just allow yourself to dump it all out and get it all out, sometimes it really is easier for me. If I walk away from the first draft for a little while, it's easier for me to come back and cut it than you think it would be. Like, if I try and cut it immediately, or if I try and cut it when I'm writing, or if I try and cut it like the day after we write the end on the first draft, and then I circle back around, I'm so close to it. And I love it so dearly that I can't let it go. But if I put some distance between myself and the draft, and then I try and tackle the revisions, a lot of times I'm able to identify like what's necessary and what's not necessary once I've walked away from it and forgotten that I wrote it. Does that happen to any of you? Like, I will write something and I will go back and read it and be like, I have zero memory of writing this. But wow, that was good, but I have no memory of this. Way to go, me. But it's easier to cut it then.
Yeah.
So two things. First, some folks have pointed out an echo, and Abby, I'm echoing through your microphone when I talk.
Probably me. I don't have my cards on.
So you get to hear me twice, folks. But one of the things when I'm not doing a challenge, when I'm not writing as furiously as possible, I like to take some time, like every week, every couple writing sessions or so. And if I like skim through what I have or see any notes that I've made of adding stuff to my world building, like my world building notes in Dabble, one of the best features of Dabble is that everything is literally a click away. If you have the folder open in the left nav pane. So it's easy to keep track of those notes because 100 times I've gone back and be like, oh, I said that. I've reread my published novels as I'm going to write a first draft for like the next one. And I'm like, oh, shoot, I said that. I need to go and fix something now. So
yeah.
Go ahead, Hank.
No, I was just gonna say that I wrote my trilogy Thorn's Legacy, which I wrote the first book of that like over 5 years, which you should never do. I'm a big fan of fast drafting, get the story all out, because I started it, put it away, worked on it some more, put it away, and I had so many details in there that I just forgot about, and it was terrible trying to keep that together. Do it fast to get it out of the way.
All right.
Did we fix the echo?
Yes.
I just want you all to know I'm going to have an earache later just for you. I love you guys enough to put my buds in.
We appreciate you, Abby.
You're welcome, everyone. I'm taking one for the team. Okay, let's see. Let's see. I think we just answered that one. Okay, Bond's question. Could you say that action is anything that's not thinking or speaking?
No, because thinking and speaking can be action as well.
Mm-hmm.
An argument
arguments
is action. Yeah. Like a teaching scene can be action.
Yeah. Two people discussing a problem and working out a solution is literally action.
Conspirators whispering.
Oh, good one. Yeah.
Internal debate can be action, but is also showing a reaction. So speaking can also do the reacting part, can show what the emotional fallout is or what the consequences are, but it can be action as well. Thinking a little less so because there's no one to think at usually. So it kind of blurs that line, but speaking can definitely be action.
And if you've done a good job early in your novel of establishing your character voices, then that much more so that your conversation, your dialogue scenes can be big action scenes, actually.
Yep. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Let's see. Renee says, sorry, y'all, I have to these are old glasses because they have the blue glare reflection stuff on. So, because I don't like that. I don't know why, but I need it so you can see my face. But I have to lean in really close sometimes. I can't read this.
I did. Sorry, before we read this question, I had a friend reveal this secret to me, which is not a secret, but Windows, and I'm assuming Apple computers, have like a built-in like nightlight setting that you can enhance or decrease. And so it used to be, honestly, doing these live shows for so many days in a row for the last like 2 years now, my eyes were starting to get strained like a month ago. Then I told this to him, and I hit start, and I think I searched nightlight or something, and now I have no problem staring at the screen for a few hours in a row. So
I'm just blind. That's my problem. I'm just blind, straight up. If I were
for everyone else in the chat, there you go.
I'd be dead.
Tip for you.
I just
Okay, let me scooch in closer. Renee says, say more about plot twist as it relates to the antagonist. I'm running a red herring antagonist in book 1. The true antagonist gets revealed 3/4 of the way through book 1. He really gets active though in book 2.
Okay. I see Hank thinking there. I'll let you think because I don't have much to say on this.
Yeah, I'm trying to to run out some scenarios in my mind of go ahead and say what you got to say, Doug.
Okay. This sounds good to me. As long as the key to a twist is that it can't come out of nowhere. It has to be something where it's a surprise, but it's a surprise that makes sense. And I personally like when you can go back and reread something and see the twist coming, because you know what's going to happen, and you can identify those like 2 or 3 moments where it was innocuous at first but totally makes sense now. So what happens needs to make sense as if that antagonist wasn't the antagonist. But now that you know the second time around they are the antagonist, you're like, oh, right there. That's the thing that I didn't catch before. That's what's important for me for this kind of plot twist of an antagonist or any plot twist. But red herrings and stuff are more up your alley, especially with this book, Hank. So
I was just going to say that if you have a hidden antagonist in your mystery, and this is going to go for more than one book, I would say hold off on that reveal as long as you can, because you can only reveal that one time, and then it's spoiled, and then that character is known as the antagonist, and they take on a completely different role once the characters in your story and the reader understand that this is who the antagonist is. So, and you can only spoil that once. So I would say stretch it out, hold it off as long as you can, especially if this is going to go into a book 2. And I'm assuming that when you go to book 2, this antagonist is going to have a very different role than they had in book 1, because they have to. You've already spoiled that they're the antagonist, and it's known at that point. So they take on a different role. So I would challenge you to think through your plan, and is it a good plan? I'm not saying if it is or not. I don't know, but is it appropriate to unveil that antagonist in book 1, especially if this is going to be an ongoing series? Like, is there a way that you could stretch that over to book 2, or do you have a plan for how this character will evolve in book 2? That's what the thought process that really kind of kicks around in my mind, because in the murder mystery I'm writing, which is one book, I'm hoping that this can become a series, but it'll be a series of different mysteries, obviously, because and so I'm holding off the reveal of who the true murderer is until 90% of the book. And if I was going to carry these characters into a book 2, I would probably find a way to obfuscate this character reveal into book 2 if I could. So I don't know if that's helpful, but I would just challenge you to think, is this the way that you want this story to unfold? And if you do reveal them in book 1, do you have a different role for them in book 2? That are you going to be able to continue raising the stakes with this antagonist if you reveal who they are in book 1?
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that is what I was going to bring up too, is that once this betrayal or this twist is revealed, then the stakes are pretty dang high. Yeah. So how do we keep them going higher?
Right.
And next week we talk about the mid. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Hank.
Yeah, and I was going to say, and you just lose the anxiety that you're able to build up to that point. Yes, it's the stakes are high, but you almost have nowhere else to go. So
yeah,
utilize that for as long as you can.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I assume that's what it was going to be in book 2. He's the big bad guy.
Gotcha.
So
I like that he appears to die.
Yeah. For next week we're going to talk about the midpoint, and then the week after we're talking about the climax. And from a theory point of view, for a twist this big, those are the only 2 points where it really makes sense to have something so dramatic and like life altering for the characters. So it sounds, or not the climax itself, but like the pre-climax, the all hope is lost moment, which then leads into the climax, and probably something like the heroes might succeed, but probably not as much as they wanted to succeed because of this twist.
Right.
So the placing of this is going to be very important. As Hank said, I'm agreeing with him. The longer you hold it off, the better, because you're at the tension's the highest. Everyone's holding their breath. They're like, what the heck just happened?
Yeah.
And so where do you go from there? Probably the climax, and then the book ends, and then we're into book 2.
You're right.
Right.
Let's like slide this question in, even though it's sort of out of order. Because NJ's asking, how often should we seed hints to twists to make it believable but not predictable? And the way that I like to think about it is, the more you shine a spotlight on something, the more the reader is going to think, this is the thing, this is it.
Yeah.
So the real clues, you're just slipping in very subtly. And you don't have to mention it more than once. You just need to make sure you mention it, because if you don't mention it, that's being too tricksy to the reader, and that's not playing fair. Yeah. So, you just have to mention it somewhere. And if you don't make a big stinking deal out of it, people are going to glaze right over it. The moment you start shining that author spotlight on your red herring, people pay attention to it more. The more times it's brought up, the more times they're paying attention to it, the more they're going to think, oh, I'm figuring it out. Oh, I see what's coming. And that's how you lead them down the wrong path, is with that spotlight.
Yeah, very well put.
Number doesn't matter, but the more you bring it up.
The red herring should have the spotlight on them, and the true suspect should be seen in the peripheral vision. You should make mention the people should walk into a room, notice them in the corner, not give them the time of day, because you've got the spotlight over here. That was very well put.
Yeah.
And the true thing off in the peripheral should be directly linked to something that is true as well, that we know is true. I just listened to Empire of the Vampire again, onto the sequel before I go to the third one that just came out. I'm very excited. And there's a twist in it where a character who our main character thinks is a boy is actually a girl. Okay? Not the hugest twist in the world, but knowing that this time around, I heard in say chapter 6, for a number's sake, this character is referred to as Flower by this gruff Scottish-esque lady, and in my head it makes sense. She's like a warrior, she's all tough and whatnot, and so calling a young teenage boy Flower, who's very skinny and not a warrior, it makes sense to me. In chapter 8, 4 chapters later, we meet someone else from the same Scotland area, who refers to his daughter as Flower. And so when you're listening to it or reading it the first time, you don't make that connection because there's distance between them, right? Mm-hmm. But having the benefit of hindsight and listening to it quickly, because I love the book, you can make that connection, right? And so you're like, this happened before, and then we saw this where it is the truth, where Flower is used correctly, and you can make that connection, and it makes sense when the twist is revealed.
Okay, so let's see, where did we go? All right, we've already done this one. So Bon, just to follow up, so what the heck is not action? I mean, interiority, I would say reflection, but decision making, I would think, would fall more in the action sphere.
Yeah,
it can, but you also,
we're splitting hairs here.
We are splitting hairs, and I think, and Bon, not to call you out on this, but I think you also dial in on terminology a little bit too much, which I don't blame you for, because I do the same thing. But action, when we're talking, again, we're going to the scene and sequel conversation here. Scene is our action unit, and that is when they are trying to achieve a goal, and they're successful or they fail, but there is effort and progress made towards something that they want to do. And then sequel is when you have the emotional reaction to it. And so to your point before, when you're talking about conversation or dialogue, that can fall into either, because you can talk to hopefully achieve something, but you can talk to deal with the outcome of something as well. And making a plan can be dealing with the outcome of it as well. And then that leads into the next action unit. But I don't you don't need to go through and define every single thing in your story that's action or reaction.
Okay, let's see. All right, here is one. Is it okay not to have an antagonist then? My male main character's wife died, so I've been using that to create the conflict because everything goes back to her.
Yes. Now, it's not the kind of story I write. But if we think about the work that we did before this month, specifically the lie and the big hurt, and we remember that the character's journey is their internal conflict getting resolved in some way or another. The antagonist is a force that we as authors can use to test that lie, to reinforce it, to get in the protagonist's way. By definition, the antagonist is someone whose goal opposes the protagonist's goal. And that's a very helpful tool for us. But especially in like literary fiction, there can be a situation just like this because the main character's wife has died. And so that event can spark this lie or some big flaw in the character. And they're just trying to figure out how to navigate their life now in the wake of this. And everything's different because of this. And they see the world through a different lens after this death. And so there are antagonistic forces, and some of them are going to be antagonistic without intentionally being antagonistic, just because that's how they view the world now. But you don't need a bad guy in this situation because the story is about the character's journey, and the antagonist is just a tool we use to help tell that.
You also have man versus himself.
Yeah.
Yep. Which is internal conflict.
Yeah.
Right. That is internal conflict itself. So,
and
the
I'm
external
falling
conflict,
back on my high school education here.
Sometimes it's
Man versus
helpful.
nature.
Right. Sometimes it's helpful to reduce things to ridiculously simple terms so that you can just kind of lay out the big set pieces of your book, maybe early in your process, that maybe not something you track all the way through, but you could look at his dead wife as the antagonist, or at least the death of her is the antagonistic force. And if you're just looking to reduce your story to very simple terms to kind of get your head around what's happening, you could think of it in those terms. That her death is obviously a motivating factor that's driving the story. So in a roundabout way, it's really he is the antagonist, but this is the force that makes him act against himself, if you want to look at it that way.
Yeah, I'm just pulling up. So we have an article about external conflict, and there is character versus character is one of our external conflicts. Can I copy? Oh, I opened it in the Dabble browser. I'll open it in a normal browser and share it. But character versus character is one of our external conflicts. All the other external conflicts don't actually involve your protagonist going up against another character. They go up against the environment and against nature. They go up against a supernatural force, but they also go up against things like fate or destiny, right? And in this case, it's like the grief itself is creating this idea of how life is supposed to be for them, and they're battling against that. So it's as Hank said, it's an antagonistic force, but from a character point of view, like it doesn't make decisions. There's no development for it. So it's not technically an antagonist, but it can be an antagonistic
force. Not going to change. Yeah.
Yeah. All righty. How many more questions we got?
So it looks like we have one fun question to end with. And nope, 2 questions now. Hank, are you adding questions?
It just came in. I had to.
Okay. Oh, you added the question. I'm in like the side that only shows you the starred one. Great. So we got 2 questions from Renee coming in hot. All right. A balance I'm trying to hold. How much do I make the reader work to track the clues? How much do I want to mislead them? And then how do I execute well so that they can figure things out and be stoked? Do you want them to figure it out before you reveal it? Like, that's one thing that I would ask myself. what's the reader experience that you want to have? So the
what
more
genre
that
are you
want them, because isn't it true that like, so one of the big mystery writers is it Agatha Christie that you can usually follow and figure it out, but Sherlock Holmes, like he doesn't give you any of the clues and you're always surprised because he puts it together at the end and Doyle didn't plant a ding dong thing for you.
Yeah, the Agatha Christie novel, you should finish it and say, I should have seen that all along.
But I didn't. Yeah.
But I just didn't. Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah,
ask yourself,
and Holmes is, fabricating some elaborate plan in the background.
He's smarter than all of us.
Right.
I mean, we love him, but at the same time, I'm like,
yeah.
Hank, do you have any mystery advice?
The thing that I'm trying to do is that when I have a red herring, I try to make sure that my red herrings mean something. So like Stu is running down these clues and they're actual problems, that they're not murder, but they're actual problems. And there are things that are working against the community and things like that, so that a red herring is not just a gotcha, like it's an actual problem. It's just not that problem. So the tack I'm taking is misdirect the reader, but misdirect them with something that matters, so that it's not just pulling the rug out from under them. And then after you pulled the rug out from under them 4 times, then give them the real thing. That just feels cheap. But by making the red herrings have stakes that matter, that just feels like a better approach.
And Renee clarified that they're writing fantasy with a bit of mystery in it. So if that's the case, most fantasy readers aren't tracking clues, right? Like they're not trying to figure it out. If you were writing mystery, then they'd be a lot more diligent about listening to every single thing. But I don't think you need to be setting up a mystery for them to solve.
Right.
If they do, like it should still be understandable, I think, again, on the reread. If they go through and read it again, it should make sense to them. But the first time around, they don't like, I don't read a book and then get upset if it's a fantasy novel if I haven't figured out the twist before the twist happens.
Right.
Yeah, and if you go back, Renee, the class that I posted, the plot twist class, which I put in the comments, I actually use all non-mystery stories to talk about plot twists, because it's not just mysteries that do have plot twists and red herrings. And I believe one of the Harry Potter books is part of what I use to talk about it, because it's, I mean, if you haven't read the Harry Potter book, where we all find out that Sirius Black is broken out of Azkaban and he's not the one who murdered, Harry's dad or whatever it is that they're going, that's the one that I use as the example, which I'm put on the spot now. So I can't remember the plot because now I'm panicked that I'm talking about it. But, I do use the fantasy example. I do use a classic example. I think I do To Kill a Mockingbird. I do Simon versus the Homo sapiens agenda. And I also use Fight Club as the examples of how to lay out different types of plot twists. And so, all right. So are you ready for the fun question? I feel like Robert's not here. He's here with us in spirit. Here's our fun question. And that's, is there a place in Dabble we can go to read or buy everyone's books when they finish? I mean, isn't that cool? So I did post in the comments at some point where we do have a place on Dabble that if your book is published and you wrote it using Dabble, we do give you a chance to spotlight it. And so, and I believe Robert said we're going to update that like once a year, right?
I think that's the plan.
That's the plan. And so if you end up publishing a book that you wrote during the 60-day novel challenge, let one of us know so that we can put you on the list. And you can also be, spotlit on Dabble. So spotlit. Yeah. I don't feel like that's the correct conjugation of that word, but whatever.
I don't like the idea of spotlighted though.
No, none of it sounds right.
No,
you can
doesn't.
Be in the spotlight.
Yeah.
I'm not your English teacher though.
I taught art, so you got me.
I know that there are some other questions that have come in, but given the time and poor Hank's been on screen for a lot today. We're already over time, but feel free to post those questions over at dabbleu.com, at Dabble Campus, and then the community can answer them. We can swing by, give our 2 cents. And I have to, of course, take this time to shamelessly plug that if you are a member of Dabble Academy, we have our workshop roundtable tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern, where we're going to be discussing our workshop from last month, which was all about the first act. And so if you're participating in the 60-day challenge with me and in Dabble Academy, we're going to talk about your first act too. And if you have any struggles, if you want to share something, all that jazz, it's a casual, laid-back conversation, video on or off, audio on or off. You can communicate just via chat like we are here if you want. That's going to be over at Dabble Campus in our Academy space as well. Hank, Abby, anything you want to add before I shamelessly plug more stuff, but just about the 60-day challenge this time around?
Nope. Knock it out.
No.
Abby?
No, I'm
all
good.
Right. Okay, so next week we're going into the second half of Act 2. And like I said before, we're going to be talking about the midpoint and the second plot point. Our lesson drops on Monday, so be sure you're subscribed here. Turn on those notifications so you know when they go live. And of course, we have our daily tips going up until the end of the month as well. So even more reasons to be subscribed. Our sprints are going all through next week, Monday through Friday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. And we have our live show next Thursday as well, where we're going to be talking about that midpoint and the second plot point. And then the other thing I want to bring to your attention is on the 25th, that'll be the last Tuesday of the month, we have our all-day mega marathon of writing sprints, where we're going to be writing from 9 a.m. Eastern until 5 p.m. Eastern. That's going to be, 16 different sprints of 25 minutes each with 5-minute breaks in between. The Dabble crew will be rotating in and out throughout the whole day, and it's kind of going into the last week, getting you to where you need to be to finish, or setting you up for success, or catching up, what have you. It's going to be a lot of writing, so make sure that you are around for some, or if you're feeling wild, all of that. And then it is mega. And then the last thing I want to say is, could we get a like from you, a thumbs up down below us for all of these fantastic questions we've been answering here from my fantastic co-hosts, Hank and Abby, and for the 60-day novel challenge. We'd appreciate that thumbs up. And if Dabble is your favorite writing tool on the planet, which it should be, tell a friend. And that's it. That's all my shameless plugging out of the way. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Who's I think Robert's hosting sprints tomorrow, or
he is. Yeah. Robert's tomorrow, and Hank is next Friday. So
awesome. And I'll take the last Friday of the month while everyone's away for Thanksgiving. The like spike. Renee, if you go to w.com, it's in our W Academy events. But I can share that link to the Academy events right now. Boom, 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 boom. There you go. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And Robert, we'll see you tomorrow. We will see you next week. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.